The most important moment so far between Din Djarin and Bo-Katan just happened. That's right, BoDin is back for another episode exploring the possible romantic relationship between Bo-Katan and Din. Last night we got Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 7, The Spies, and boy, do we got a lot to talk about. This episode was just jam-packed with so many cool scenes and a lot of BoDin, a lot of important BoDin. If you're enjoying this series so far, make sure to smash like, subscribe for more videos, and without further ado, let's get right into it. BoDin for the win. This is the way. So, before we can get into the juicy BoDin stuff, let's go over the beginning part of the episode. So the episode opens up with the girl that wiped the mind of Dr. Pershing, and she's reporting to Moff Gideon. She's reporting to Gideon that the Mandalorians are back being a nuisance. So then we cut to Gideon, and he is alive and well at a base of operations, and he is meeting with this so-called Shadow Collective, which is just the remnants of the Empire, and they're discussing some things mostly regarding their leadership and a mention of Grand Admiral Thrawn, and Gideon is skeptical of his return, and Gideon's asking for help from the other Imperial warlords for them to send him resources, ships, and some praetorian guards so that he can deal with our Mandalorian friends. Then from there we cut to Navarro with the Mandalorian fleet led by Bo-Katan. Grief Cargo is assuring a droid that they are indeed Mandalorian and not Imperial, and then we get a really cool scene with Grogu, who's sitting in the lap of Bo-Katan, really showing that Grogu just loves Bo-Katan a lot, is very fond of her, and that Bo-Katan really can be that mother figure for Grogu. So the Mandalorian fleet lands, led by Bo-Katan, and there's a bit of an awkward tension between the Bo-Katan Mandalorians and the Children of the Watch. There's a little bit of tension, and that's when the armorer cuts in, gets everyone's attention, and says to welcome our fellow Mandalorians and that they're gonna have a feast. Grief Karga hooks Din up with some expensive liquor and tells him basically to use it wisely and maybe wait till there's less people for Din to share it with. So maybe he's getting at Din should share this with Bo-Katan on a romantic date. Give him a little hint hint. Then Grief also has another thing to give Din. It's not actually for Din, it's for Grogu, and that is the IG unit has now been into IG-12, and basically is Grogu's Iron Man suit. So Grogu is able to hop into it, and Din's kind of against it, but Grogu kind of leaves him with no choice, and Grogu's inside of it. And I think Grogu's kind of excited that he can kind of walk around, but he's also a little bit irresponsible with it. He starts eating food and not paying for it. So we'll have to see where this kind of goes, this parenting dynamic. Next we cut to nighttime, and it's the feast with all of the Mandalorians, and Bo-Katan is giving a speech how it's time to retake Mandalore and that they're gonna need a scouting party to set up a perimeter, so she's gonna need volunteers. So of course Din is the first volunteer. I mean, come on, it's BoDin, what do you think this is? And then there's some other volunteers as well, Axe Wolves, Paz Vizsla, the armor, and then we cut to the fleet going to Mandalore. So then the recon team, once they're in the appropriate drop zone, get dropped down, make sure it's clear for them to land. So it's just this scouting party of Bo-Katan, Din, and the others, and they're walking around exploring, and they're trying to get to the Great Forge, but before they can get there, they spot something in the distance. So it ends up being this sort of land ship, which is kind of just like a large sled, and it turns out to be Mandalorians that have actually survived all this time on the planet and survivors. So they kind of talk to each other about that and how they kind of survived, and then Bo-Katan gets into basically the story of how she lost the Darksaber to Moff Gideon in the Great Purge, and about how it was more complicated than a lot of the others, specifically the Children of the Watch people thought of her, being cowardly for surrendering, but it was really her only choice as they were getting massacred. And then of course Moff Gideon betrays her and takes the saber. And then at the end of this discussion, Bo-Katan makes an important point that Mandalorians united are one of the strongest forces in the galaxy, and that it's always the division of the Mandalorians that has caused their demise. From there she goes to the edge of the ship by herself to think, and this is where we get the most important moment BoDin so far. Djarin comes up from behind Bo-Katan and basically tells her that he was taught that Bo-Katan and her group of Mandalorians were selfish, but that they were taught wrong, and that she and the others did follow the way and were basically honorable. And this is where Bo-Katan kind of counters with she was indeed selfish and acknowledges that it's partly her fault for why Mandalore is how it is now. Din reassures her by saying that they'll rebuild it together. Bo-Katan starts doubting herself about how she's not sure if she can keep the Mandalorians united, and says that the Darksaber is all she has to unite the people. And this is where Din basically says he only knew of the Darksaber from what she had told him about it, and that the Darksaber means nothing to him or his people, and that he doesn't care about station, bloodline, and that the qualities that matter to him are honor, character, and loyalty. And he says, "These are the reasons why I serve you, Lady Kryze." And follows up with, "Your song is not yet written. I'll serve you until it is." And wow, throughout this whole scene, the facial reactions that Bo-Katan is giving as Din is saying this really just show how much she cares of what he thinks of her. And when she hears that Din thinks of her that way, just the relief on her face and just the happiness you can see in that is just really touching between them. And wow, props to Din. Nice job, nice words. And this is just so important for BoDin and really sets us up for that potential next step, especially for the finale of taking it to the next level. Later on, then, Bo-Katan is talking with the armorer, and the armorer says she's going to take these injured, surviving Mandalorians back to the fleet. So they do that. And then Axe Wolves and Paz Vizsla are playing this kind of like Mando chess-like game. There's a disagreement, and long story short, a fight breaks out between them. It gets pretty intense, and that's when Grogu, of all people, steps in his IG-12 suit and tells them no with the buttoning. And Din says to Bo-Katan, he certainly didn't learn that from me. The armorer and the injured Mandalorians arrive on the fleet, and then we cut back to the surface, and into the distance, a monster emerges. And this freaking monster is going right for their ship, and it's just huge and is obviously going to destroy it. So the captain of the ship says to abandon ship, and they get out of there, and they head underground, and they're actually right next to the Great Forge. Thanks to the Mandalorians that have been there, we're able to lead them close enough. So although they lose the ship, they're in the right spot. But as they're admiring the Great Forge, that's when they get ambushed by Imperials out of nowhere wearing this new and improved Beskar armor. The situation is looking pretty dire, so in the heat of the action, they have Axe Wolves fly through an opening in the upper cave so he can go contact the fleet to get reinforcements and get support. The battle actually does start to look like it's turning in favor of the Mandalorians, and the Imperials are in retreat, so they advance on them, and Din says to Grogu, "You've got to keep up," and then Din leads the way, laying the bod out, taking hits with his Beskar armor so that they can get in close and deal with the Imperials. And it's just very Din-like and leader-like of him to just lead the charge like that. And it appears they've rooted them out, but now they're confused as to where they are, as doesn't seem to be abandoned, and there's a sort of structure here that is clearly Imperial. And as they're kind of baffled at what they're looking at, the blast doors behind them close, and there's two layers to it. So Din and a few other Mandalorians were the furthest ones up, so a blast door closes behind them, separating them from the main group, and the Mandalorians surrounding Din get massacred. And it's just Din left standing against a couple dozen Imperials, and he has little to no chance, and he fights valiantly until he is captured, and all Bo-Katan and Grogu is watched. And that is when the great threat appears in all black armor, and Moff Gideon emerges in his new Beskar suit, and Gideon is taunting Bo-Katan behind the glass with Din tied up, and he tells the Imperials to go take him to the debriefing room, and that while they have the elements of surprise, he alerts his TIE pilots to go attack the Mandalorian fleet and destroy them once and for all. Moff Gideon is looking for them to surrender, and Bo-Katan is not going to make that mistake again and get betrayed. She looks at Paz with her Darksaber, and they know the plan is going to be her to use the Darksaber to cut a hole in the blast door behind them to get out of there, while time is bought, and Bo-Katan is able to cut a hole through the back blast door, and pretty much everyone is able to get out while Mandalorians are buying time. But as Vizsla decides there are too many of them and that he's gonna buy time to ensure that they can escape, and he closes the blast door behind him so that he can take on the Imperials himself. And the music in this scene is just so epic, and it's actually quite sad, and I'm not even that attached to the character, and Bo-Katan is obviously even hurt by it too, getting to know Paz a bit and become friendly towards him. But Bo-Katan gets out of there, and then Paz Vizsla fights the Imperials, and he actually does quite well. He actually takes out all of the regular Imperials that are there. That is until the 3 Praetorian guards that Moff Gideon ordered show up and give Paz Vizsla a brutal death. Paz, this is the way. And this is where the episode ends. Obviously, Din is captured, and it is definitely not looking good for him. Grogu is going to go sicko mode in this IG-12 unit. I can just feel it, to get his dad back, and Bo will do everything in her power to get her future hubby back, especially after what Din vowed to her earlier in the episode. I'm super excited for next week's finale. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to smash like, join the Discord if you haven't already. Hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. BoDin for the win!